I was brand new to Draw Steel, first time directing, and the starter adventure through 31 enemies at my 5 players in session 1, and it worked. Hey everyone, welcome back to Roll for Perception. I'm Terry Jakimiak, and on this channel we dive into tabletop role-playing games, reviews, actual play, tips, and all things TTRPG. If that's your jam, hit subscribe and let's roll. Now, here's how my first Draw Steel session actually went. The biggest wins, the biggest slowdown, and what D&D and Pathfinder players should know before jumping in. I've played and run a lot of systems over the years, so I'm coming at Draw Steel as a TTRPG veteran, but brand new director. And a lot of times that is one of the most fun things to be able to do. Now, I've read the text and I've directed exactly 1 session so far. So this isn't a long-term review. This is the first contact. So understand that what I'm saying now may change in the future. Now, if you're coming from D&D or Pathfinder and you're looking for something heroic and tactical, this is what it felt like at the table. The biggest thing that surprised me immediately, table talk is not a problem in this game. It's a feature. Draw Steel rewards the party thinking out loud, coordinating and playing like a team. It feels very different than many of the TTRPGs that I've played in before. If you've ever had a combat where 5 people are kind of running separate solo turns, Draw Steel pushes the opposite direction. It wants the table to ask, what's the plan? For the first session, we played the Delian Tomb starter adventure with 5 players and 1 director, me. Now, understand we haven't even come close to finishing the adventure. We got through 2 combats, and the second fight included 23 enemies versus this party. This is way more than I have ever done before. Now, important detail. Many of those enemies are minions, which means they're designed to be cleared efficiently and they share a health pool. So, for example, 4 goblins each have 5 health points, stamina in this game, and they're all kind of linked. So if somebody attacks one and does 8 points of damage, they do 5 to the one that they're actively fighting and 3 more to another. So it's a big dramatic battlefield situation without needing every single enemy to be a full bookkeeping nightmare. And this is kind of where Draw Steel eventually clicked for us. One of my players, as a level 1 character, I remind you, transported across the battlefield and took out 4 minions in a single strike. The entire table had that oh dang moment because it wasn't just I attack, it was a tactical cinematic move that changed the shape of the fight instantly. Once we saw that, other players were looking for what they can do in that same vein. And if you're coming from D&D or Pathfinder, this is the kind of thing I think you'll appreciate. The system supports those big hero turns where the map matters. Second big win, teamwork showed up immediately. 2 players started running this coordinated play where one would move into position, land a hit, and then the other teleports them along with others back to safety after the strike. That kind of setup and rescue teamwork happened multiple times through 3 hours, and it created this really satisfying rhythm. Commit to a play, get value, get out, reset. And I'm not exaggerating. My players talked more during this Draw Steel session than some of my Pathfinder 2e tables have done over weeks in the past. And this was just session 1. But it wasn't table talk in the argument sense. It was table talk in the team tactics sense. The game wants you to strategize together. So here's the big takeaway after 1 session. Draw Steel wants you to look at the battlefield and ask, who sets up who? What space do we control? When do we push in and how do we avoid getting punished? And when I say push in, the idea of push, pull, and slide in Draw Steel is amazing. The goblins, for example, in that fight of 23 different goblins, their goal was to push the players into this brazier so that they would take damage. And yes, when you get pushed into someone, you take damage. In fact, at another point, one of our players pushed a goblin into another goblin and it did damage to both of them. It feels a lot less like everyone take a turn and more like the team solves a combat problem together. And minions help with that because they encourage sweeping, coordinated plays instead of slow single target grinding. Now, there is one friction point that we saw in the first session: speed. As a level 1, characters have a lot of abilities they can use during the encounters, and players definitely paused sometimes to figure out what was best. Totally normal, but it did kind of slow the tempo in this first session. Here's what I do to smooth it out, especially if you're coming from D&D or Pathfinder and you're learning. Pick a default turn option. I can always do this move, and they call this a signature ability in Draw Steel. Pick one big play option, and this is going to be one of your moves where you're spending your resources. Your when the moment is right move. Use a quick reference, cards, a short ability list, anything that helps. And as director, I'd keep the table talk, but give it a rhythm. Plan quickly, commit, and go. Because that same depth that slows you down in session 1 is also what creates the teamwork moments. Once players internalize their tools, I think this game is going to fly by. So, after one session, here's my honest take. If you're coming from D&D or Pathfinder and you want heroic fantasy where tactical teamwork is baked in, Draw Steel is extremely promising. I'm not calling this a final review. I'm one session in, and in fact, I'm starting another group that will be streaming on our Twitch channel, so make sure to check us out at twitch.tv/roll4perception. But I can already see what it rewards: coordinated play, clever positioning, and those big table pop-off hero moments. Now, if you like hearing how different heroic fantasy games compare, check out my previous video where I reviewed 13th Age 2nd Edition, another great D&D adjacent system with a totally different set of strengths. And if you want a part 2 after my next session, drop a comment. What do you want to know? Combat flow, character options, prep time, or how the starter adventure supports new directors? And don't forget, hit that subscribe button. See you next time.